Hey guys, so I wanted to hop on really quick and just share a few tips on how you can go about picking the right photographer for your wedding. If you're watching this video, you're probably engaged, so congratulations. It's so exciting planning a wedding, but it's also really overwhelming, especially when it comes to picking the right vendors. And with photography, it's the thing you're gonna walk away from your wedding with, besides your spouse, of course. But you're gonna have these pictures forever, so they matter. It's a really big deal, and choosing the right photographer, the right fit for you is important. And as I'm making this video, I'm looking at my sweater and thinking I totally chose the wrong sweater to be on camera with, but whatever, that's fine. I chose the wrong sweater, but you don't want to choose the wrong photographer. So I'm going to share these tips and hopefully they'll help you. So maybe you're feeling like there's a ton of photographers, like trillions of photographers to choose from, and it overwhelms you and you just don't even know where to start. So it is true, there's more photographers than ever, and that can make it a little harder to kind of sort through. But the beautiful thing about there being like 99 trillion is always the number I say, photographers out there, is that if you want to find a photographer who shares your love of free people, chocolate, wandering in the woods, and goat cheese, those are my loves, of course. If you want to find a photographer that has those exact loves, you'll find them. They're out there. Or if you're more like you're into CrossFit, being vegan, shopping local, if those are your things, you will find a photographer who shares those types of passions too. So you really can find someone who is such an amazingly good fit for you today, who's also incredibly talented and is going to be an absolute delight to have with you on your wedding day. So yes, on the one hand, there's a ton of photographers out there. It's harder to sift through them all. But on the other hand, when you do a little bit of digging, you're going to find someone who is such a perfect fit for your day, and that makes for great pictures. So obviously when you're looking at photographers, you're looking at their body of work. You're looking at maybe Instagram, Pinterest, wherever you're looking. You're seeing these pictures. You know you love that particular photographer's body of work, or maybe there's a handful of photographers and you're like, I really love their work. Or you're looking at their website, you like it, but now you've got 20 different photographers whose work you like. How can you start narrowing it down? Well, the first thing I would suggest looking at is their personality. So you can learn about their personality via their Instagram page, their stories. Start following them on Instagram, follow their stories, their blog. You can definitely learn about their personality by meeting in person with them, whether it's actually meeting online via Skype or FaceTime, or whether you actually schedule a sit-down meeting. But learning about their personality is so important because on the day of your wedding, the vendor who will spend the most time with you is your photographer. Your photographer will be with you from start to finish. And if that person drives you nuts or just kind of gets under your skin for some reason, it affects how you act on your wedding day. It's going to affect you, and you're not going to be able to be as free with their camera around you. So in order to have really amazing pictures, obviously you're focused on your wedding day. You're focused on your husband. You're focused on your family. You're focused on all these things. You're hopefully not too focused on your photographer. But you want to feel like this good friend is by your side and kind of has your back and is there and you're having fun with them. You want someone who it just feels like it's a delight. Someone, I would say, who you would almost feel like you'd want to hang out with. Like you'd want them to be your friend, because then you just have another friend on your wedding day. So maybe you love the person's pictures, but if when you kind of start following them on Instagram or talk with them in person, you feel like we're just not clicking as people, then that's a good sign that that's not the right photographer for you. And that's okay, because that's going to be somebody else's perfect fit. And there is a perfect fit for you out there. So wait until you find it. And if you have to meet up with 10 different photographers until you feel that connection, that's okay. That's what you want to do. So my next tip would be to ask the photographer about his or her story. How did this photographer get involved with photography? Did they go to school? Is it something that they just had a passion for and worked on? How long have they been doing this? What can they tell you about their absolute favorite wedding they ever shot? Do they have some funny stories? Do they have any little side tips they can offer up? What makes them just super excited about wedding photography or super passionate about wedding photography? And in asking questions like that, you're going to weed out people who they're just doing it because they need to pay some bills, or they're just doing it because, you know, they just need to do something for work. So why not photography? Which is, of course, with 99 trillion photographers out there, you do not need to settle for someone who has that kind of an attitude. And there's nothing wrong with being that kind of photographer, I guess, but that's certainly not who I'd want to hire for my wedding, and you shouldn't have to hire that person either. So there are photographers out there who love their job. I'm one of them, so I know they're out there, and I've talked with so many photographers who are so passionate. So ask their story and then listen for the excitement, listen for the passion, because you deserve to have a photographer with those qualities at your wedding. Let's talk for a minute about pricing, because I know at this point, if you've been shopping around for wedding photographers, you're seeing that there is a huge difference in pricing. And perhaps on the front end, you go to two different photographers' websites, photographer A, photographer B, their styles are similar. They seem to kind of pictures look the same almost, like the same style, but one photographer charges, let's say, $2,000, one photographer charges $7,000, let's say, and you're just kind of confused as to why. There usually is a reason. I mean, maybe there are photographers that just pull a number out of a hat and say, that's my price. But for the most part, photographers choose their pricing based on a few different things. So years of experience matter. And obviously, the longer a photographer has been in business, probably the higher the price is going to go, which is the same with pretty much any job out there. The more experienced someone is, the more they've invested in themselves to develop themselves professionally, the higher the price is to work with that individual. Something that really does come into play with pricing is how many weddings in a year this photographer is shooting. There are photographers who are shooting 2, 3, 4 weddings a weekend. And then there are photographers like myself who shoot maybe 2 max a month. It just depends. And the reason that varies is because of shooting styles and also because of levels of customer service. So for those that are shooting more, you can imagine they're spread a little more thin as far as customer service, and perhaps maybe the attention to detail when it comes to editing the images at the end, or all different kinds of things are affected when you're shooting a higher volume. Whereas when you're shooting a lower volume, I know for myself, my goal is to really try and provide very personalized customer service, to really give my all to each and every client that I work with. And that's part of my business model, and why then the price will go up a little bit more versus those that are shooting more. So you can imagine, when you think of it that way, how the pricing does have to change. And then you can also imagine when you've got photographers who maybe this is just kind of their side gig, they do it from time to time, it's not their full-time job, versus a photographer where this is their full-time job, this is how they feed their family. You can see how the pricing can then change. And you can decide for yourself what type of photographer would be someone you want to work with. Because if you're someone who really is price conscious and trying to get that price as low as you can, maybe you can find someone who the customer service end won't be as phenomenal, perhaps because they're shooting so many weddings, or maybe they have less experience, so they're not able to charge as much yet, and maybe they're going to do a great job for you, and that'll be perfect. But that is one of the reasons why the pricing is so different. That, along with the end product, every photographer does provide something a little bit different, whether they have a second shooter or not, whether they're offering albums or not, whether the digital files are included or not. All those different types of things can factor into the price. So it really is important to talk with the photographer, and it's why most photographers will say their prices start at, to give people an idea, but they don't really kind of flesh it all out because every wedding is so different. So chat with the photographer and ask questions about pricing. The next tip is to decide how trendy or classic you want to be with your photography style. So if you're looking at a photographer's website and what you're seeing is the most up-to-date styles, which is 2019, just became 2019 2 days ago. And right now, if you scroll through Instagram, you're going to find a lot of muted kind of earthy tones in wedding photography and engagement sessions. That's huge right now. So when I started like 11, 12 years ago, there was this trend of kind of doing a yellow wash over photos. I don't know why, but I thought it was really cool at the time. And I remember looking at pictures with that and being like, I love it. And now I look at those pictures and I just hate them. I'm like, why is there yellow? But there's always the risk that when something is trendy, that years later, you won't like the trend. And some people look at the trend and think, oh, it takes them back, and they're still fond of it even if they don't love the trend anymore. So it's just important to consider for yourself, if a photographer is offering something that is very trendy and you love it right now, 10, 20, 30 years from now, are you still going to love it? Or if you're choosing something more classic and you'd like to have classic photos, then it's important to choose a photographer who offers that. If that's kind of their style, to do something a little more timeless, that the colors are just a little more something that, their black and whites are classic, their colors are classic, something that will kind of stay in style all the time. So it's something to think about when you're looking at the portfolios. The only thing you would never want to do, you would never want to go to someone who is completely rocking out these new trends today and say, hey, can you give me a classic style, or vice versa? Because there's no point in doing that. You might as well go to someone who that is their thing and they are amazing at classic photos, or they are amazing at that new muted out editing, or whatever it is you love. Go to someone who offers that, because they're going to be able to do a phenomenal job for you, and that's what you want. Let's talk solo photographer versus large studio. Which one's best? Well, there's no right or wrong answer here, but let's talk about the pros and cons. So the pros of working with a solo photographer: you love that photographer. You pick them because you love them. You love their work. You love their personality. You're so excited they're going to be there at your wedding. But they could break their leg. They could fall down a mountain. They could get hit by a bus. Anything could happen. Probably it's not going to happen. It's not a high likelihood, but it could happen. So that would be the con. Now, the pro of working with a large studio is if the photographer falls down a hill or mountain, hits by a bus, whatever, there's like 30 other photographers to take care of it. So someone's going to be there at your wedding. The con is you don't necessarily get to pick who it is that's going to be there, and you don't necessarily know that you'll love that person or their style. So you can kind of see the pros and cons to both. Now, what would I do personally? I would choose a solo photographer because there's a slight risk there, but I'd rather take that slight risk to get the person that I really want. And most photographers have a game plan for what's going to happen if they're injured or could not be there due to extreme illness or extreme circumstance. So it's something to definitely chat about the photographer with. Ask them what that plan is, what would happen if they're unable to make it. Check on their track record. Make sure they probably are at most of their weddings, if not all of their weddings. And it's something to definitely do your research on, but I wouldn't be too scared about hiring a solo photographer as long as you know that it's a professional who has a great track record of being there. Here's a really important tip. Ask the photographer if you can see some samples of actual galleries that were delivered to clients that include the images of their entire wedding from start to finish. Now, this is important because you go onto their website and you see the photographer's samples that they put up there. And maybe they do show some weddings where they're showing a handful of pictures, maybe 40, 50 pictures from that day. But it's very helpful if you can see what a client actually receives from the photographer. And if you can see a full wedding, whether it's 300, 700, 1,000 images, whatever it is the photographer provides, you'll get a really good feel for if this is the type of service or the type of photos that you would want to have delivered after your wedding. And if you're someone who really cares about maybe candid moments, or you like formal portraits, whatever it is you love, you'll be able to peek through this wedding and see, does this photographer do a great job with the style that I really want captured at my wedding? Let's talk about engagement sessions. So engagement sessions are a big deal, and yes, you do want an engagement session. Now, let me tell you why. So a few years ago, well, 5 years ago or so, I actually switched from making engagement sessions optional to just plain old including them in the package. They come with the package. And the reason being that I noticed a huge difference in the weddings that I photographed where I had done an engagement session. Because when I'd already done an engagement session, the couple, first of all, felt confident in how I could photograph them, because they'd get their pictures and be like, I love my pictures. So now it just kind of gives you like, I'm ready for my wedding. I can't wait to see what the wedding pictures are going to be like. But also we get a chance to kind of get to know each other and bond a bit. And then come your wedding day, it's not like, oh, the photographer's here. Oh. It's like, Kate's here, whatever, keep going. And that's my goal. I definitely want people to feel so comfortable that they forget I'm there, because that's how I'm able to give people beautiful pictures. And I know that you'll find the same thing with any photographer you work with. You'll get a chance to bond when you work with them before the wedding. So it's super, super important that you go ahead and do that. Plus, you'll end up with beautiful pictures that you'll love having in your home. A chance to share those pictures maybe on your wedding website that you might be putting together. Also, it is a chance to have kind of a trial run with your photographer. If it's just such a horrible experience, you maybe have a chance to find a different photographer. So it's important to do those photos. Definitely look for a photographer that is as excited about engagement photos as you should be, because they are really special and they are a huge part of having great wedding photos in the end. Really important tip is for you to stop and think about what it is you want from your wedding photographer. What do you want to walk away from your wedding with? Do you want digital files? Do you want tangible prints? Do you want an online gallery? Do you want an album? What is it that you're looking for? Every photographer offers something different. So it's very important to know what it is you want so that you can find a photographer that offers that. So in my case, for example, my clients come to me, they always want the digital files. So that just comes with my packages. My packages are digital files. And my clients typically are on the craftier side, I've found over the years. And they usually want to be able to go on a really cool website like Artifact Uprising or Pinhole Press, or a site that has beautiful books, and they want to create their own books, and they want to create all kinds of books. They want to really use their files. And so I actually only offer packages with files. It's very rare that I offer anything else to clients unless they really want them. But that's kind of what my clients are looking for from me. They want easy access to those files and an easy way to be able to work with those files. Other people might not want to deal with those files at all. That would be the most horrendous thing for them, to have to make their own album. They would hate it. So look for a photographer who's offering what it is that's going to work best for you. And like I said, there's so many photographers with so many different offerings. You will definitely find someone who has exactly what you're looking for. The last tip is a huge one. You're obviously looking for a great artist, but you are looking for someone who is a true professional, because this person could be the most creative genius out there, but if they can't get to your wedding on time, or if they get to your wedding and treat people in a way that's not professional, that's not cool. So you need someone who's going to be a real professional. And the ways to be able to tell that from the start are simple things like, are they returning your calls promptly? Are they returning your emails in a respectful, courteous way? Are they on time for meetings with you? Do you get the sense that they are treating people, their clients, in a professional way? And our guts usually can tell us when something's just not right. But there's just no excuse for lateness, because for weddings, you can't be late. There's just no, weddings need to start on time. So a photographer needs to be dressed professionally, speak to people professionally, and that's part of doing a great job. So that's something to look for. And if you think someone has amazing portfolio and you meet them and they were late and they're sloppy and they just don't seem that interested in you and don't seem professional, move on to the next person, because there are so many photographers out there who really, really want to do a great job for you. So that is it for my tips. I thought I was going to be on here for 5 minutes, but instead I was on here for like 20 in my ugly sweater. Sorry about that. But there's a lot to say, because there is a lot to think about when you're thinking about choosing a wedding photographer. So deep breaths, don't be overwhelmed. I hope these tips help you, and happy wedding photographer shopping. I know you are going to find the perfect person for your wedding.